Hello everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to ChasingCinema.com's official YouTube channel. I'm your host, Jacob Tiranno, and today is Throwback Thursday, a day where I'm going to talk about an older movie. And since it is October, though it is already late in October, I figured I'd better start talking about some horror movies. I get this question all the time, so let me take the time to review one of my favorite horror movies of all time, Pet Sematary. Before I get into that, I just quickly want to remind everyone that yesterday was Movie News Day. I talked about Kong vs. Godzilla. I talked about Thor 3, as well as Fox and Marvel. If you haven't seen that video, make sure to do so right here. So let's hop right into it. My review of Pet Sematary. So Pet Sematary is a adaptation of a Stephen King novel by the same name, and actually the screenplay of this film was written by Stephen King as well. It was directed by Mary Lambert. So Pet Sematary is basically this story of this family, the Creed family. Lewis, his wife Rachel, his daughter Ellie, and his son Gage. And it tells the story of this family who moved from Chicago to Maine. And after some weird events, they are led to this pet cemetery, which is basically hidden behind their house. Their next door neighbor, Judd, brings them to this place. And I don't want to give too much away because as much as I want to review this movie, I don't want to spoil it, because this is a movie I recommend people watch. It's a movie that, isn't most of the time listed on those scariest horror films of all time or the best horror films of all time. Technically, it was panned by critics, or just not well received. However, I think this movie scares me not because of its eloquent filmmaking, but because of just the story, the characters. There's a character in here which I still can see in my dreams sometimes, or nightmares sometimes, because of how much this movie had scarred me. Her name is Zelda. But like I said, I don't want this to be a spoiler review, but however, I'll give you this. So this pet cemetery is introduced to this family once the neighborhood cat Church dies. And, I'm not going in specific order here, but what they realize this pet cemetery does is it can bring things back. And after realizing that they have this in their backyard and their cat Church has passed away, they realize maybe we should give it a try. Church is resurrected. He comes back, but Lewis, the father of the family, realizes, and played by Dale Midkiff, who does really, really great in this movie, quickly realizes that something is different about Church, and he's a little bit more aggressive than usual. And all this time, we have their next door neighbor, who is played by Fred Gwynne, famous for Herman Munster, who plays Judd. And he says, he's the person that people are going to quote from this movie. He has a very, very funny way of talking. That road. Don't go down that road there, Lois. Don't go down that road. It's where this movie goes later, which I don't want to spoil, that really kind of makes this movie so dark, right? There's this kid in this movie. His name's Gage. You will probably recognize him. He is definitely more of a notarized child actor by the name of Michael Hughes. And there is some pretty unfortunate things that happen. Okay, I don't see myself not reviewing this movie without telling you guys. So, I'm going to just kind of go there. So, I can only really recommend you watch this movie. I think it's scary, it's terrifying, it messes with innocence and family and love. There's a lot of different elements of scary here. There's slasher horror, there's supernatural horror, there is visual horror, there is just things that we feel as children or as we grow older, the things that are scary that we just don't understand. Type of horror as well. I know that's a little bit vague, but once you watch this movie, you'll know what I mean. So from now on, if you don't want to know what this movie is and you just want to take my advice, which I highly recommend you do, and you go watch this movie, Pet Sematary, please go check it out right now. If you don't care, if you're like Louie and you like spoilers, then let's do it. So after simply not paying attention for just one seeming moment, Gage walks onto this road that I quoted earlier from Judd. Watch out for that road, which is constantly being ran by, truckers going back and forth, and Gage is hit and killed. And Gage is super young. I don't know how old he is exactly in this movie. I can't remember off the top of my head, but he's young. And, he's basically still a baby. I want to say maybe 3, maybe 4, and he's killed. And this easily drives Lewis, the father of the family, kind of crazy. And at the same time, there's this character that we meet very early in the film called Victor Pascal, who keeps coming back and haunting Lewis. And all of these things are leading Lewis to kind of say, sometimes dead is better. That's a tagline for the film. Well, actually, yeah, it is a tagline for the film. And it's a quote that we hear throughout, because sometimes bringing something back isn't what we're supposed to do. However, the loss of a child can be so detrimental to somebody that maybe it's worth giving a shot. And I'm sure he's not the only one. And I think that's what makes this story so good, because even with all the signs, I think there are a lot of people out there that would actually think about it, if not do it. And when I say do it, I mean bury their child in the pet cemetery and wait for him to resurrect. So we have the supernatural horror of Victor Pascal's ghost kind of haunting this family. We have the supernatural powers of the pet cemetery and what possesses them and who's been buried in the pet cemetery. We have the slasher horror, because when these people or animals come back, they do not come back normal, and it kind of becomes a slasher film towards the end, which I'll get to in a second. But then we have these things in the movie that really scare us. And when I said earlier that Zelda is one of the scariest characters I've ever seen on film, she's a sister to Lewis's wife Rachel, and she is told kind of in backstory, and it's just not really a major aspect of the movie, but it's a story that Rachel shares while she's going through all these horrors, and she's talking about her sister, who basically was hidden in the back of the house, who has this terrible disease. She had spinal meningitis, which I don't really know what it is, but this character is horrifying. I mean, the way that she looks, and I'm not talking about, how this really works, but how this movie created this sick person who's hidden in the back of the room, and how she holds herself, and how her back looks so contorted, and how she approaches the situation. She is terrifying. She comes to play somewhat in the movie later, towards the climax, but it's just her presence that is awfully terrifying. And you could ask pretty much anyone who's seen this movie, Zelda is horrifying, and she is what will probably keep you up at night. However, it is also the loss of innocence, the loss of a child, that makes this movie kind of horrific, not in the pop-out scare type manner, but horrific in the sense of tragedy and sadness and terror and that feeling of loss. So the movie kind of comes to a conclusion with Lewis, the father of the family, going after Gage, who is now alive and not who he used to be, and he is doing some damage, and I'll kind of leave it at that. But, for this movie not being so enjoyed by critics, I could see, the effects aren't the greatest. They don't hold up that well, but this is a movie that truly frightened me as a child. It's a movie that I try to watch every Halloween, not necessarily the day of, but around the time I will always pop this movie in, because it genuinely freaks me out so much, and it's really good. Stephen King makes an appearance. The cast's really good. It's just a movie that I always kind of resonate with the horror genre, and always put that up on my list. So, guys, make sure to check it out. It is Pet Sematary. Thank you so much for tuning into this Throwback Thursday review. Don't forget to tune into my movie news review. See, my dogs are even frightened of Pet Sematary. And to answer your questions, no, I would not bury them in a pet cemetery, because I know of pet cemeteries. Make sure to tune in tomorrow as I review Crimson Peak, Goosebumps, and Bridge of Spies, all tomorrow here on this channel. The best way to never miss a video is to hit that subscribe button right down there. Do so there. If you've seen Pet Sematary and you want to talk about this movie with me, because I'd love to talk about this movie, let me know what your thoughts are down here in the comment section. We can get into a great conversation about it, I'm sure. If you've not seen it, take the time to go watch this movie. It's Halloween, guys. Go watch some scary movies. This is a great one. You could have, I'm recommending it. That probably doesn't say much to some of you, but I'd really recommend it. Go watch it and then come back here and let me know what you thought. Right above the comment section, there is a thumbs up button. Make sure to click that. Lets me know that you're enjoying these videos and I'm doing a good job, and that always feels really good. So, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jacob Tiranno, and please continue chasing cinema. better go down that road. Don't go down that road there, Lois. Don't go down that road.